Hello and welcome to the 31st video in the PHP e-commerce series. My name is Curtis and this is Free Skills. Well, we've been waiting for this for a long time. In fact, many of you guys maybe even dropped out of the project because it's taken too long to get to the good stuff. But I promise you that we are here, and one of the reasons that it took me so long to do this part of the series, well, we had to build a lot of the project up before we can get here, but I was also contemplating and debating heavily on what payment merchant or payment gateway I wanted to use in the demonstration of this. And there are a lot of good ones out there. There's some that have been around for a long time, and there's some new ones. And one of the we have authorized.net out there, and you could use that. There are plenty of payment gateways. One of the most widely used ones is PayPal, and PayPal, of course, is owned by eBay. And PayPal is very good. I've used PayPal on projects before, and ultimately I decided not to use PayPal. I decided to use a newer service called Stripe. And Stripe, let me just go to Stripe really quick. Just go to stripe.com. And there are a couple reasons. One, I really like how easy Stripe has made it to use their APIs and to accept payments. Literally, you could just include a few lines of JavaScript onto your page and have an integrated form and everything built for you. We've done a little more than that, so we're going to go a little more in depth, but their API is really easy, their documentation is really nice. There are good documentation with PayPal, but there are so many tutorials out there showing how to use PayPal. That's one of the reasons I went with Stripe. The other reason I went with Stripe is that well, to be honest, I hadn't used Stripe yet on any sort of project, so I wanted to learn how to use Stripe, and I heard that it was good, and their fees are reasonable, and so I kind of like the story of Stripe and the developers and everything, so I decided to go with it so I could learn it myself and then teach it to you. Now, a couple bad things about Stripe, and one of the things that gave me a little bit of made me debate whether or not to use it is that Stripe isn't necessarily available in all countries yet. I mean, you can purchase stuff on Stripe from any country, but if your business is located in certain countries, it may not be available to you just yet. And there are plenty of support. You can put in your country and email address, and they'll email you when your country's ready. I know a lot of my followers with this video series right now are in the Indian Ocean, I believe, area. So just India and some of those parts. I don't think, and I may be wrong about this, just go ahead and check if your country's available. If your country's not available, it will be soon. But what I did want to show you, if it's not available, is I found a service called Zwitch, I believe. Let's see. .co, so zwitch.co, and this looks really similar to Stripe, and this is available in parts of the world that Stripe is not available. So you could just go and check out their About Us and you could check out the pricing, their features. They have very good documentation as well, and they actually even set up this is a lot like Stripe in the fact that you can see, along with their documentation, code examples of how to use their services. And so this is very similar to Stripe, so I just want to encourage you guys that if it's not available in your company, check this, and chances are you could use Stripe or this. And I think, but the bottom line is this: once you learn how to integrate with an API and other software, just reading some documentation for whatever service you want to use is going to be very similar across the board. Now, there are some things that happen now, and maybe PayPal's changing, but there's some things that happen in Stripe that's a little bit easier than in PayPal to get some of the information back. PayPal, you have to set up, you know, kind of a parser file and have like a webhook that is called when a transaction is processed, and that is called to the back end and processes, maybe adds all your information to the database. In Stripe, immediately an object is returned to you, a charge object is returned to you, and you could store that information. You don't want to store the card information, obviously, but you can store like the charge ID and things like that so that you can reference it later. But anyhow, that's enough talking. If I didn't choose the payment gateway that you were hoping I would choose, I'm sorry, but just go ahead and follow along. And by the way, you could set up an account and follow along with this no matter what country you're in. So you can follow along and use this and test it and everything else no matter where you're from. It's just to go live. It will only be available in certain countries. Alright, so what I want to do is go to, well, first thing you want to do is go ahead and set up your Stripe account. And I already have a Stripe account set up here. Let me just sign out here. And here at stripe.com, you can go ahead and create an account right here at sign up. I'm not going to go through that process. I've already created an account, so I'm going to go ahead and log in, and I'll see you after we've logged in. Okay, so here's the dashboard of my Stripe account, and you can see I already have some money that came in, and this was not real money. This was money from my testing before I shot the video, but we can continue to watch that. Alright, so in order to use this, once you have your account created, just go ahead and click on documentation. And inside the documentation, we're going to scroll down a little bit, and down here in references, there's an API library. So go ahead and click there, and then find PHP language. And right here, it says that PHP library is installed via Composer. So we're going to go ahead and set up Composer first. After you have your account created in Stripe. So just go ahead and control click that to open it in another browser. Now, what's kind of scary to some people is that we're going to have to use the terminal if you're in Linux or Mac, or if you're in Windows, you need to use command line. But it's very, very simple. You get to copy and paste some code that they provide for you, and it's very straightforward. So I'm just going to click on Get Started here in Composer, and you can see that Composer is a dependency manager for PHP. So it allows us to require libraries, and we can pull libraries, the stable libraries, and we can use those in our projects. And then what's really cool is it actually tracks what version we're using in our project, and we can move this to someone else's server or give them the files, and when they run the dependency manager, it will get the correct version of whatever library we're using. And we're lucky enough that Stripe has their libraries in Composer, so it's very easy to get them. So we're just going to click on Get Started, and I'm going to scroll down. It tells you a little bit about what it is and the system requirements. Go back and read that. And then here's the installation for Linux and Mac. And down a little bit, here's the installation instructions for Windows. Now I'm using Linux, so I'm going to follow along with the Linux installation. But it's very, very simple. See this line? I'm going to grab this curl line here and copy that. And then what I need to do in my terminal is just go to my project directory. So in my case, it's /opt/lamp /htdocs and then /tutorial. And if I hit LS here, you can see all of my folders and files inside of that folder. Once I'm inside my folder, where my root folder is, I could just paste in that curl command. Let me just make this a little bigger here. You can paste that in and hit enter, and okay, it tells me that I don't have the PHP 5 command line installer. You probably won't get that. If you do, just go ahead and follow along. I'm going to go ahead and try to install that really quickly. And it actually told me the line that I needed to type in here, which is what I did here, to install my command line interface for PHP 5. And it's going to take a moment. Alright, once that's done, I'll go ahead and right click, paste in that curl again, and now you can see that it is downloading, and it says Composer is successfully installed to, and then it installed it inside of my root directory. So let's just go ahead back to Atom now, and if I look, I now have composer.phar, which is a PHP archive, and I can run command lines. This is like a binary file for PHP, and I can use my command line to run this script now. So the other thing that we have to do is, let's go back here to Stripe. So we have Composer installed, but let's just leave this open for a moment. And if I go back here, it says in order to install the PHP library, I need to add this this require to my composer.json file. Now we don't have a composer.json file yet because we haven't installed any other libraries with Composer. So in my root directory here, I'm just going to create a new file, and we'll just call it composer.json. Okay, and we can just simply copy in Stripe here. We can just copy this right here into that file and save it. Now we're ready to run. Now that we have that in our JSON, our composer.json file, we're actually ready to run our Composer. So in order to run Composer, we simply just need to, it says we can go here to now that you've installed Composer, you're ready to use it. It says go to the next section, so we'll go there, and all we got to do here, see, it says the require key, and this talks about, you know, require, and we already have our Stripe library here in our composer.json, so that's that. And so all we need to do is run this command line right here, so the install dependencies. So this would install everything that was in our require, our composer.json require. We only have one thing we're going to install for this project. So now I'm going to go ahead and paste that and hit enter, and it says loading Composer repositories and package information, installing dependencies. So I don't know if you're using Linux or Mac. This probably worked for you if you're using Windows or Mac, but if you're using Linux, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my well, I'm going to find my package manager. I'm going to try to install this ext curl. See if that's available here. Okay. I'm going to try to install this PHP 5 curl right here and see if that takes care of it. Alright, so I didn't even check, I didn't try this on my machine before, and I apologize, but hey, maybe someone else is using Linux and has the same issues. So let's see if that worked. Let's go ahead and minimize that and hit up to run our Alright, so that worked, and it says that, see that it wrote the lock file. So let's go back now and look in our project. If we look in our project here, let me just kind of close some of this up so we can see it. We have this composer.lock that they added, and so this file here has a lot of information about our Stripe PHP and the version and everything else that we need to run in our project. So we don't need to mess with that. I just wanted to show it to you. We don't need to use this composer.json anymore, and what we notice now is there's a new folder or directory added to our project, and you'll need to leave this, and the first thing in here is Composer, and we have all these autoloaders and classes and things, which is really awesome, and we're going to get to that in a moment. And then here are our Stripe libraries. So we have Stripe PHP, and then we have all of these classes that we could use. And we didn't have to write any of this code, they just provided it for us, and we just simply get to use these. So that's the reason we installed all of this. We did it through Composer because it's very easy to do. And I just wanted to show that. I know in the past I was a little bit confused when I tried to use Composer, so that's another reason I wanted to go ahead and go through this entire process. But yeah, so that's we won't need our package manager anymore. That's the hardest part about Stripe so far, is getting these libraries installed through Composer. But if you once we have Composer set up, we can use it in other projects. We have all our dependencies met on our system, and we're good to go. Okay. So the next thing that we want to do, and this is in the documentation, but there are, let's see. Here, see this auto loading? We don't want to have to include all the classes that we may use on each of our files, or even in our require init, our core init, because then we'd have to maintain that list. Rather, we can actually do this really cool auto load thing here, and what we want to do is in our core init file. Let me just go ahead and open that up. So here's our core init, and in here, right here underneath our helpers, we're just going to do a require, and then we're going to use our base URL, and we'll concatenate onto that our vendor OR, and that's this folder here, / autoload.php. Now it will autoload whatever class we're trying to use in our project. We don't have to include it, we just have this one line, and it will autoload those for us. That's really cool. That's one of the cool things about using object-oriented programming with PHP, is that we can use autoloaders for our classes. That's not available for autoloading files or anything like that, or functions with procedural PHP. So that is a benefit of using OOP, or object-oriented programming. Alright, once that autoload is there, we're going to get started with including some of the requiring and including some things that we need to include. So in the includes, go ahead and go to head.php, and we're going to add another JavaScript file here. So go ahead and add some script tags, and we'll do source equals, and actually you could do a type if you would like, just to make it a little more compatible with older browsers, but you could say text JavaScript. Oops. Okay, and then for a source, we're just going to put https js.stripe.com /v2, and then /, and then we'll close our script tag and open and close. There we go. So that's all we need to include in the head element. So now this Stripe JS will be included now. So that's good to go. And then the last thing that I want to do before in this video is we're going to set up some more constants in our config file. So if we look at our Stripe account and we go to your account, for one, we notice that there's two we have test and live. Test isn't accepting real money, it's just for development purposes, and then when you're ready to go live and take money, you can go ahead and switch that over to live, and you'll have to fill out some more information, and it has to be available in your country to go live. But what I can do is click on my account, and I'm going to go down here to account settings, And then in my account settings, I'm going to go to API keys. And now I know you won't want to show anyone your API keys. I'll show you mine because I can just go and reset them by hitting these refresh keys. And I'm going to do that after the video so that you don't know what my API keys are. But you can see that we have 4 API keys. We have a secret and a publishable key for test mode, and we also have a secret and a publishable key for live mode. And so rather than having to worry about all that later, I like to, in the config file, what we're going to do is we're going to define a couple things. First thing we're going to define here is we're going to define currency. Okay, and for me, I'm just going to put USD. Okay, you would put whatever your code is for your country's currency there. And then the next thing I want to do is define, we're going to define our checkout mode. Okay, so we'll say checkout mode, and right now I'm just going to set this to test. Okay, and I'm going to put a little comment here so that later I remember, and change test to live when you are ready to go live. Okay, so then what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to put some if statements here. We're just going to say if checkout mode is equal to test, then I want to define Stripe private. Okay, and we'll get that in a moment from our account, and we'll define Stripe public. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this whole thing here and paste it right there and change that test to live. Oops. Okay, so now we can just plug in our values here from our keys from our account, and then we only have to change this in one spot in our code, and we'll have access to Stripe public and Stripe private for our API keys throughout our project. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy mine over here. So our test secret key, oops, copy that whole thing. So here is our private or secret, same thing. Okay, and then here's our test public or publishable. Okay, and then we'll do our live secret. We're going to put that in our private here. And the last one will be our live public key. Alright, so we'll save that, and that's it for our config file. So here's our currency. We can even put a little comment here for sales tax rate set to 0 if you aren't charging tax. Alright, so that's it for this video. I know that it's kind of a weird video and it's not normally what, you know, the kind of feel that we have, but we just need to get a few things set up, and in the next video we will charge a credit card, and then we'll be done with the whole shopping cart part of this series. So anyways, if you've enjoyed this, please comment, like, and subscribe. And again, if I'm not choosing your specific payment gateway that you were hoping for, I do apologize, but there are many different options out there and many different opinions. This is just what I've chosen to use, and once you learn this, you can choose to use whatever payment gateway you want to, and you'll just have to read their documentation on how to adapt the code to work with that. But it shouldn't be too bad. Alright, well, you guys have a good night, and I'll see you in the next video.